History 1. In 2017, I was 21 and working for the summer at a youth camp for underprivileged kids. I'm going to leave out the city name, but just know that it was a typical urban area with its fair share of crime. Despite this, I had been assured that the neighborhood was in the midst of being revitalized, with a new coffee shop and dog park just down the street. Picture a place where rundown houses with junk in the yard stand right next to pristine homes with modern designs. The youth camp was essentially a large two-story house with a spacious fenced yard. We were assured of our safety because there were bars on the windows and the doors locked automatically. The camp activities took place on the first floor, while the four of us summer counselors lived upstairs. The upstairs area was off-limits to the kids during the day. Our camp ran 5 days a week from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., leaving us free in the evenings and weekends to explore or rest. One weekend night in July, we were all in the house making a spaghetti dinner. We each had our own food supplies and labeled our snacks and meals to avoid confusion. We also had 2 fridges and 2 pantries VDJ, one for the camp and one for the staff. My best friend at the camp, whom I'll call Jess, and I were in charge of dinner that night. I went to the staff fridge to grab the ground beef and immediately noticed that my case of yogurt was gone. I had just opened a new box an hour earlier and left it right in front of the ground beef. I turned to Jess and said, "All right, who stole my yogurt?" In addition to Jess and me, there were the other 2 summer counselors, 2 permanent counselors who lived in the area, and the cousin of one of the permanent counselors. Everyone looked at me wide-eyed and confused. I suspected the cousin, as I didn't know her well, but decided to let it go, saying, "Just please don't eat stuff with someone else's name on it." Jess and I finished making the spaghetti, and we all sat down to eat. The 2 permanent counselors volunteered to do the dishes, and the rest of us went upstairs to relax and watch TV. We were only a couple of minutes into an episode of Family Guy when the cousin, whom I'll call Sarah, suddenly said, "Wait, I can't find my phone or wallet." I paused the show and asked her where she last had them. Sarah said she left them on the couch before dinner. Naturally, we all started looking around the small room, checking under cushions and behind the furniture. When we didn't find anything, we asked if she might have left them downstairs. Sarah agreed to go check, and Jess and I went into our room, which was connected to the sitting room. We flopped down on the bunk bed and started talking about Sarah, thinking she was ruining our chill night. Suddenly, I saw a hand sneaking around the doorframe. I called out, "Hey, did you find them?" thinking it was Sarah or one of the others. The hand quickly disappeared, and there was no response. I explained what happened to Jess, and we both got up and called down the stairs. The others shouted back that they hadn't found Sarah's things. At this point, I was freaked out, wondering who was upstairs with us. We searched the upstairs area but found no one. We decided not to mention the hand incident to avoid sounding crazy. When we got back downstairs, Sarah was upset and crying. Her cousin asked if someone had taken her stuff, but Jess and I insisted we hadn't. Sarah screamed that someone must have taken them, leading to a heated argument. I finally mentioned the hand, hoping to ease the tension. Instead, everyone panicked and we searched the house like maniacs but found nothing. We called our camp director, who arrived to find us huddled in the foyer, freaked out. After hearing our story, he was skeptical and threatened to call the cops if someone didn't return Sarah's things. None of us admitted to taking them, so he called the police. The cops searched the property, took our statements, and wrote a report for the stolen items. This made Sarah feel a bit better, but the situation remained tense. The next few days were uneventful, and we gradually relaxed. Sarah's phone and wallet never turned up, but nothing else weird happened. One afternoon, after the kids had gone home, the 4 of us were cleaning up. Jess noticed the kitchen door was open again, which wasn't unusual given the kids' comings and goings. She shut it, but then I noticed the staff fridge door was also slightly open. Jokingly, I said, "Oh no, he's back." We laughed it off, and Jess grabbed a broom, pretending to hunt for the intruder. She opened the pantry door and a few closet doors, yelling theatrically. As she opened the closet in the front room, she stopped mid-sentence and screamed. She threw the broom and ran out the front door, leaving it open. My heart pounded as I followed her, thinking she was messing with us. I saw her running toward the coffee shop and turned back around to see an older man in the foyer. He looked dirty and had a few teeth, grinning at me. He raised his hands and said, "I didn't mean no harm," while backing away. His tone and grin felt mocking. I was frozen for a moment, then stammered, "You can't just leave." He repeated, "I didn't mean no harm," before turning and running. I fumbled for my phone and called 911. When I reached the edge of the house, he was gone. The next events were a blur. The cops took our statements again and reminded us to keep the doors locked. Our director apologized for not believing us initially. My parents wanted me to come home for the rest of the summer, but I refused, thinking nothing worse could happen. Jess was traumatized and later told me the man had grinned at her with dead eyes, like he was waiting for her. Even now, almost a decade later, I can't bring up that summer to Jess unless she's been drinking. The unanswered questions still haunt me. How long had he been in the house? Why did he take Sarah's things? Had he listened to our conversations and watched us? Where had he hidden on spaghetti night? I'll never know, but I'm thankful our encounter wasn't worse. History 2. I'm feeling really scared right now and I could use some advice. This is a bit of a long story, so bear with me. A few months ago, this guy started showing up at my favorite coffee shop. At first, he seemed nice enough. We had a few casual conversations, but it was clear he was interested in more than just being friends. He asked me out a couple of times, and each time I politely declined. I even mentioned that I have a girlfriend, hoping he'd get the hint. My girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years, and we're really happy. I thought he would respect that, but instead, things took a turn for the worse. After I rejected him for the 3rd time, I started noticing him everywhere. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe we just liked the same places. But then it got weird. He'd be at the grocery store when I was shopping, at the park when my girlfriend and I were taking a walk, and even outside my apartment building. I tried to brush it off as paranoia. A few weeks ago, my girlfriend and I were at the park. It was a beautiful day, and we were just enjoying each other's company. I saw the same guy in the distance, and my heart sank. I tried to ignore him. That night, I got a message on Instagram from an obviously fake account. It was a video of us at the park with a message that said something creepy like, "See couple shame, one of you is with the wrong person." We were both freaked out. I reported the account and blocked it, but videos kept coming, different accounts, different angles. Since then, I've stopped going out as much, and when I do, I always feel like I'm being watched. My girlfriend tries to be strong for both of us, but I can tell she's scared too. We've talked about moving or calling the police, but we're both unsure. Has anyone else dealt with something like this? How did you handle it? Any advice on what we should do next? I just want to feel safe again. History 3. I'm from a small town in the Midwest, and this happened 6 years ago when I was 21. One early morning around 8 a.m., I returned home after staying the night at my boyfriend Joe's place. Joe had to leave early for work, and my parents had already left an hour before I got back, so the house was empty. I headed straight to my bedroom to catch some more sleep. As I was about to climb the stairs, I noticed the kitchen door and window were wide open. I was surprised but didn't feel any immediate danger since it was my own home. My dad is extremely cautious, and there was no way he would have left the windows open before leaving for a 2-week trip, especially knowing I stayed at Joe's most nights. Still, I was groggy and just shut the door. I checked the kitchen and living room quickly, and then went up to my room. There are 3 rooms on the 2nd floor. I went to my room to change clothes, then to the bathroom and back to my room. For some reason, which I usually don't do, I decided to close my door. I was scrolling on my phone for about 5 minutes when I heard what sounded like footsteps right outside my door. Someone had been in the house the whole time while I was moving around, completely unaware. My heart sank, and I froze in fear. I grabbed the first thing I could find, my baseball bat, and stared at the door, ready to defend myself. I was ready to jump out the window if the door opened. Minutes passed, and I heard the person moving down the stairs. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually I called Joe and he rushed over to help me. At first I thought I was imagining things because I hadn't actually seen anyone, but Joe found evidence that the kitchen door and windows had been tampered with. The intruder had been waiting silently, probably hoping I would fall asleep so they could leave without being noticed. The whole experience was terrifying. I thought I was safe at home, but I wasn't. Since then, I can barely stay alone without feeling anxious. Now that I live alone, I constantly fear someone breaking in. What's worse is that they didn't take anything valuable. My mom's jewelry, my gaming console, my dad's computer setup VJ, all were untouched. This made me think they were there for another reason entirely. At that time, I was very active on social media, particularly Snapchat. I used to post daily updates, sharing almost every detail of my life with my 5,000 followers. After this incident, I stopped using Snapchat altogether. I'm sharing this because I'm looking for some perspective. Do you think my social media activity could have been related to what happened, or was it something else entirely? History 4. In early March of 2013, my husband Bob and I were driving back from a marriage retreat that had been held at the High Regency in Lake Tahoe. Spring was approaching slowly, so snow still blanketed the Sierra Nevadas. We dressed in coats and boots whenever we ventured outside our hotel. Despite the snow melting slowly, we enjoyed viewing the occasional green foliage peeking out from the thick layers of snow among the tree lines. The towering embankments of the Sierras made for perfect landscape pictures, the kind you find on desk calendars or stock photos sold online. We had enjoyed the marriage retreat and relished the experience of staying at a 5-star hotel. Now we were given the privilege of driving through the most breathtaking parts of the Sierras, a final treat as we headed home and back to the work week. Bob had to take pictures. Not that I don't enjoy a photo or two, I do, but he always insists on a picture of us and a picture of me. I'm not photogenic, and whenever we traveled, he would stop the car, get out to take photos, and then subject us to ugly photos of ourselves that we'd probably end up deleting from our phones later on. Fortunately, we would get the occasional gold nugget of a photo, and that's what he was striving for on our trip down the mountain that day. So I obliged, allowing him to relish in his photo-taking of the landscape, of him, and of me, even though I was pretty sure I looked atrocious. There were several vista points and turnoffs along Highway 80 for picture-taking. We had to be cautious when pulling off the highway since the road twisted around cliffs and embankments. Even though the weather conditions didn't require snow chains this particular weekend, we knew the roads could still be dangerous and slippery. Some of these vista points were just off the side of the highway, but they could appear quickly when we drove around a bend. We didn't want a chance sliding across the road in an attempt to stop. Other vista points required us to actually exit the highway and drive a short distance away, and these were more plausible for Bob's photo escapades. We took one such exit on our descent through the mountains. The exit led us to a short road that dipped under the highway and over to a clearing with a field brushing with bushes devoid of foliage, but with the Sierra Mountains in the background, creating a striking contrast of snow-covered peaks against the beautiful blue sky. We could still see the highway to our left, a good 500 yards away, but if we angled our phones away from the highway, we could still capture the beauty of nature in all its glory. Better yet, elements of spring revealed themselves with slightly warmer temperatures, so we could take photos without multiple layers of clothing. We pulled the car to the shoulder, got out, and walked down a slight embankment to get a better photo. I took a photo of Bob, and he took one of me. As we walked back up the embankment toward our car, we heard a loud noise of a car's motor in the distance. I turned and saw a dark-colored Porsche zoom down the highway rather quickly, considering the twisting road, then pull off the exit we had just taken, tear down the road right in front of us, and stop behind our car on the shoulder. It was almost as if the driver was in a hurry to what, I didn't know. I figured the driver had stopped quickly to enjoy the scenery as we did, maybe snap a photo for himself before rushing to his next rendezvous. Instead, the driver got out of his car and asked if he could take our picture. What struck me about this younger dude was his appearance. From a distance, he looked homeless, eccentric, like one of those guys living on beaches, dressed in worn-out clothes with holes in their pants. He sported a grunge-like look with brownish, shaggy hair, the beginnings of a beard displaying itself in patches around his face and a plaid shirt. But as we walked up to him, in the middle of him asking us that question, we got a closer inspection and noticed he was clean despite his grunge look. Upon a closer look, I got the impression he was a rich kid in his 20s, perhaps someone donning the messy look as his own outcry against society. But getting back to the scene, as we headed back up the embankment toward our car, he asked us in a friendly voice, "Hey guys, would you like a picture?" It wasn't VDA TMT abnormal for us to hear that. Often when you're taking pictures on vacation, you may ask other tourists to take a photo of yourself and your spouse, or someone walking by may initiate their photo-taking services. This exchange took a matter of a few seconds, so we both just said, "Sure, why not?" and handed my phone over for pictures. Before our brains had time to process that the scenario we found ourselves in was now off, we were the only ones on the road other than this guy and apparently his girlfriend, who sat hidden in the shadows in the Porsche's passenger seat and didn't VDJTMTT move an inch. By the time the grunge dude had us take a few steps back down the embankment for the picture, my dumb brain finally kicked in and said, "Hey, something's off here." But by then, he had already stepped back toward his car, taking several pictures of us from my phone until he achieved the perfect shot. Though we grinned for the photos, we stood on edge, with me wondering if he would take this opportunity to take off with my phone, jump in his car, and speed off. Uneasiness came over me as he continued taking photos, stepping backward closer to his car a little bit each time. A scene from National Lampoon's European Vacation popped into my mind, one featuring a nice man offering to take a video of the Griswolds, characters who had newly arrived in France or Germany or some European country. The Griswolds naively accepted the offer, and the nice old man encouraged them to take off their shoes and stand knee-deep in a plaza fountain for a better video shot, only for the man to run off with their video camera instead. This led to another comical conflict later on in the film. But I was NVJ/Tamday thinking about that. No, I was thinking in those 1 or 2 seconds how much of an idiot I was for letting this guy take my phone to supposedly take pictures. But when he took one last step toward his car, Bob, who had the same uneasiness, abruptly and quickly took a few steps up the embankment, reached forward, and then quickly took my phone from the man's hands. Thank you, that's good. Those photos will work," he said, laughing off the awkwardness. I joined Bob at his side and we waved at the grunge dude's passenger, who made no effort to look our way. I think Bob even asked if they wanted a picture too, if my memory serves me right. But the grunge dude declined, saying his goodbyes to us, got back in his car, made a U-turn, and left just like that. The bizarre thing was, when the grunge dude originally got off the highway and parked behind us, he'd been driving westbound on Highway 80, the same direction we were. But now, as we watched his car tear up the road from us and jump back on Highway 80, he headed eastbound, back toward Lake Tahoe, with the same robust speed as when he had made his appearance. Why had he done this only to turn around? What was his point of taking our photos and then returning from where he came from? What was he planning with us? And what had deterred him from going through with it? Was he on drugs? And why hadn't his female companion said anything? Why did he come and leave with such urgency, revving his car's motor and taking off so quickly? We noted how bizarre this was, but at least the uneasiness had waned, and now I had my phone safely with me. We got back in our car and continued westbound on the highway, still not sure what to make of this, but we just pushed that out of our minds as we continued to drive down the mountain, maneuvering the twisting, bending roads and admiring the nature around us. About 20 or so minutes later, the uneasiness returned when we came upon a car accident just around the bend. An upside-down SUV had crashed into the steep cliff to our right. Transit authority and state trooper vehicles tended to the driver while making sure we passed through safely. The incident was unrelated, but something about this and our encounter with the strange grunge dude made us uneasy, tainting the atmosphere. This unsettling feeling lingered even as we and the other vehicles passed the accident scene slowly. I don't remember if I saw the driver or an ambulance, but I knew the accident was bad if the vehicle had overturned. The unsettling feeling remained with us during the rest of our 3-hour trip back home, but nothing else came of it, so in the end, it was anticlimactic. Still, the encounter with the grunge dude stuck with us. Bob later said that he had a flashing thought that the guy might pull out a gun on us. I wondered if he was a thief, and maybe, for whatever reason, decided not to take our phone or valuables. Or a later thought that came was this: what if he wasn't there for malicious reasons, but perhaps a divine intervention? It wasn't that long after this encounter that we happened to stumble upon that car accident. Had his picture-taking delayed us enough to avoid getting caught in the accident and flipping over ourselves? Or maybe that's my imagination gone wild. Still, the bizarre encounter always remains.